Hello, we're glad to have you joining us today for this webinar on the Corporate Transparency Act, Navigating BOI Reporting. I'm your moderator, Jenny Alton from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. We're pleased to have with us Frank Tumminello, co-founder and CEO of FileForms, and Ian Quinlan, Director of Client Success at FileForms. This webinar is brought to you by the New York Small Business Development Center, a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. We have regional centers located throughout New York State. Our free advising, education, research, and advocacy services are made possible by funding from the SBA, New York State, and our host academic institutions. So you know, this session is being recorded. We will share a link to the recording and slides with attendees in a follow-up email. Attendees are muted and will not be on camera today. Your chats will only be visible to me and our presenters. If you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A box as they come up. You can open Zoom's Q&A box from the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And with that, my introduction is concluded, and I will turn the time over to Frank.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure to be speaking with all of you today. My name is Frank Tumminello. I'm co-founder and CEO of FileForms. We're a technology company on a mission to help businesses get compliant and stay compliant, specifically around federal and state compliance requirements. So today we'll be speaking with you all about the Corporate Transparency Act and navigating beneficial ownership information reporting, which is a new law and requirement for businesses that has an upcoming deadline in the next 97 days, January 1st, 2025. So with that, we can get right into it. Just a quick background on myself. I come from a decade-long background within the financial services industry, working with many financial services and technology businesses over the course of my career. I started my career in investment banking, primarily working with banks and other asset managers through strategic transactions, and then really spent the lion's share of my career doing private equity investing into financial services, insurance, and healthcare companies. So over the course of time, I've gathered a really unique perspective on what creates a remarkable client experience, especially in the realm of complexity that a lot of times is the case with regulatory and financial services. So with that, really excited to be working with a large number of businesses and business advisors and other associations and communities such as NYSBDC to ultimately help businesses save time, avoid unnecessary fines, and stay on track so that they can really focus more of their time on growing their business. So as an entrepreneur and bootstrap business owner and operator myself, I really can relate to a lot of the time and effort it takes to kind of get to this point in your career and your entrepreneurial journey. So really want to help those in need, especially when it comes to education and solutions for new laws that sometimes can be a little scary. So just to kind of provide a little more context on FileForms, we are a technology business that was founded and designed by CPAs, attorneys, and other industry professionals. My co-founder, Kenny Detman, comes from the CPA experience, formerly at Alvarez & Marsal as a managing director there. So we have a very complementary skill set, which helped bring FileForms to market. Our business is based in South Florida. We have a hybrid team throughout the United States. My colleague Ian on the line is in Brooklyn today. Furthermore, we're focused on educating millions of businesses about the Corporate Transparency Act and also providing them secure and easy to use technology that ultimately is integrated directly to the federal government. So we'll learn more about who FinCEN is and why that acronym might become more and more popular, but we actually have a direct integration into the federal government, which has led to us winning awards and other kind of certifications for our security, such as SOC 2 compliance. So that's a little bit on us. Hopefully that helps frame why we're informed and able to offer kind of all the detail needed to understand this new law. And really, this new law is focused on preventing money laundering. Money laundering is a huge cost within the United States today. It's costing our nation tens of billions of dollars annually because illicit actors are using shell companies that really don't require much information to form, but can be used to avoid taxes, to fund illicit actors, and ultimately launder money. So given how significant of a drain on our GDP this is, and how other economies around the world have incorporated beneficial owner reporting into their protocols of policing kind of the financial crime within their nations, it's really the U.S. has really taken it upon themselves to now put forth a law that's going to help them create a database that ultimately will help identify and prosecute these criminals. So a lot of you might not be familiar with the U.S. federal government's, more specifically the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. You've never had to report to FinCEN before, which is the acronym used for the mouthful that is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. FinCEN is an agency that, quite frankly, has existed for many, many years. But unlike the IRS, who everyone unfortunately is very aware of, FinCEN has relatively flown below under the radar for most businesses. But FinCEN is likely an agency that is familiar to folks in the banking industry, perhaps the real estate industry. It's actually been around since the late 90s, and is now starting to expand its scope to incorporate small businesses and help the U.S. government regulate this new law. So FinCEN's ultimately creating a database with all the beneficial ownerships reports that are submitted, and using that, cross-referencing it with other databases such as the IRS's database, and providing access to other three-letter agencies so that ultimately the nation can come together and stop these criminals. But the Corporate Transparency Act has actually existed for a little while now, since 2021 when it was passed. But rightfully so, the nation was fully consumed by the COVID pandemic when this went into law. And it didn't get much attention from business owners. So, the government passed this law really to give 2 years runway for folks to get educated, ultimately get their information in, which started actually January 1st of 2024. And then they gave a 12-month window for folks to get compliant, which we're kind of at the tail end of now. So effectively, this law has been around for a while. It hasn't received much attention, and we believe that's subject to change now that we're 97 days from the deadline. And it's important to note that the Corporate Transparency Act is really impacting a very vast amount of the businesses within the United States. In fact, over 33 million businesses are expected to file a BOI report by the end of the year. So that is a ton of information that's getting filed, much more than the number of corporate tax returns that are filed any given year. And ultimately, this is really going to propel many businesses to get aware, understand the intricacies of this new law, and ultimately get compliant. And it's crazy to think we're well through the year at this point, but only about 4.6 million out of 33 million, or some people even think 40 million, have filed so far. So it's really important that you don't miss that deadline, because there are pretty serious penalties. But it's important to note that the mass majority of businesses in the United States will have to comply. And ultimately, here are kind of the deadlines and the requirements. So, on January 1st, the government launched their portal, effectively, allowing businesses to begin to file, despite the fact that many businesses were not aware of it. Businesses that were formed prior to January 1st, 2024, ultimately have until the end of 2024 to file. But that's only 97 days away at this point, and still, the lion's share of businesses have not filed yet. Businesses that were formed during 2024 have to file the BOI report within 90 days of forming their entities. So a lot of businesses may have formed this year. Their 90-day window might have flown by, and um, perhaps they're already delinquent on that deadline. However, still highly recommended to get that filing in. If you do fall into that category, more than likely won't get fined upon filing. So, but that is something to keep in mind. And then in 2025, in fact, as you're forming new entities, the window shrinks from 90 to 30 days. So once again, it's really becoming part of the formation process and owning an entity or being affiliated with an entity in the United States. And then a lot of people ask, oh, is this one of those annual filings, or is this something else? Well, it's actually something else that's a little bit more substantial, because despite this not being an annual filing, it's a perpetual monitoring of this data, and the form, will go into it, but the form has quite a few fields on it, more than 50 different data points on it. And if any one of those data points change within 30 days of the change, you have to re-report the information. So a lot of companies are going to be finding that they're having more than one change throughout the year, which is going to lead to many filings and effectively the need for a solution to help make this easier. BOI reporting, though, what is actually on the report? So let's think about that. There's reporting company information, and then there's beneficial owner information. And we will dial in who's a reporting company and who's a beneficial owner and who's a company applicant. But before we get into that detail, we just want you to know what's on the actual report. So for the reporting company, it's the legal name, the DBA, the current physical address, jurisdiction of formation, and then their federal tax ID number, which might be an EIN. So if you don't have an EIN, you're going to need to get one in order to file. Furthermore, most of this information should be readily available. This typically isn't the section of the form, with the exception of the EIN, that's all that complicated. As you get into the beneficial owner detail, this is where you start getting into very sensitive information. So you got name, date of birth, address of the beneficial owner, also their ID number, such as passport, driver's license, or other state identification document, and then also an image of that document, which I like to emphasize because that is something that has never been required on a tax form or any type of state legislation or state disclosure. And a lot of folks probably aren't used to disclosing that information. A lot of practitioners, such as CPAs, aren't necessarily used to collecting that information. And generally speaking, a lot of folks are just concerned about their identity getting compromised. And once again, having a good solution to collect what could be many beneficial owners on a single company. As you can see, that is somewhat of a task, and one that should be taken very seriously. So we talked about all the different information on the form. I want to just reemphasize that when there is a change of information. So once again, if you think bunch of different beneficial owners on a single company, maybe there's 4, maybe there's 10. Those changes are really going to be significant, and people don't realize that can get out of hand very quickly. So every time there's a change, you need to re-report within 30 days, which will be enforced by FinCEN. So now let's take a step back to what is a reporting company. Now that we know what a form looks like, generally speaking, what information they're asking for, let's understand what is a reporting company. So we recall that there'll be 33 to 40 million reporting companies that are needing to file by the end of the year. A reporting company actually can be 2 types of business. It could be a domestic reporting company or a foreign reporting company. So there's 2 different types, depending whether you're based in the US or outside of the US. But if you're a domestic reporting company, you are one of the following. You are a business that formed a registration document or formation document with the Secretary of State. So that can be a Delaware limited liability company. That can be a California for-profit corporation. That can be a Florida homeowners association. That can be a Texas general partnership or a Massachusetts tribal organization. These are all the different examples of companies that file a registration document with the Secretary of State or form an entity at the Secretary of State level. So helpful to note that this is encompassing many, many businesses, most businesses in the United States. Now, if you're a foreign reporting company, perhaps you're forming your entity outside of the United States, but you're registered or licensed to do business in the United States, that would also be a reporting company. So despite the fact that there's a formation outside the United States, the license and registration within the United States is effectively going to cause you to be a reporting company. So hopefully that's helpful context. Now, despite the fact that you might have formed a registration document with the Secretary of State, there are 23 exemptions that folks should break down into about 6 specific categories. And actually on our site, we have a quiz on our landing page that you can easily navigate to. And we break this exemption into a nice user journey so that you can help determine very easily whether you're exempt or need to file a BOI report. So I highly recommend that. We can follow up with that link afterwards. But I like to break these 23 exemptions down into 23 specific or 6 very specific buckets. And I just want to emphasize that these are very specific exemptions. So most companies will not get the benefit of the exemption. And that's honestly by design by FinCEN, because they already have pretty clear understanding of certain types of companies that already disclose ownership information with the government in some capacity. And the first example of that is highly regulated companies. So if you work in an industry that's highly regulated, for example, banks, utilities, insurance companies, public accounting firms, PCAOB accounting firms, for example, publicly traded businesses, obviously their ownership information's very public. So those are highly regulated businesses that government already has a high level of comfort that they understand who owns or affiliates, controls those businesses. So the next here on the screen is large investment companies. So that could be any, clearing agencies, venture capital funds that are registered, pooled investment vehicles, anyone that's regulated by the Security Exchange Commission. Once again, those are highly regulated and already have a lot of transparency around ownership for the government's benefit. Tax exempt entities is the next category, or any nonprofits. Once again, if you're not paying taxes, there's a lot of boxes to check there, and that ultimately can lead to no need for a BOI report. The fourth category is large operating companies. I like to emphasize this one just because all three parameters, if you will, need to be met in order to be deemed a large operating company. And the first parameter is you have to have 20 or more full-time employees. Furthermore, you have to be based and have an operating presence in the U.S. And then lastly, you have to have 5 million or more of gross receipts. So if you do meet all 3 of those specifications, then you'll be deemed a large operating company and not have to report a BOI report. However, if you only meet 2 or 1 of those categories, then ultimately, for example, you only have 15 employees, but you have the revenue and an operating presence in the U.S., you would ultimately have to report. So key distinction there. Subsidiaries of certain exempt entities would also be exempt in some instances. That's kind of a more complex hands-on approach to determining that, which we are more than happy to opine on. So please do reach out if we can be helpful with entities owning entities, especially if some are exempt. There could be some nuances around that. And then effectively inactive entities, which has caused a nice brouhaha within the community of small businesses as to when and how they had to dissolve in order to get the benefit of this. But effectively, if you properly dissolved your entity prior to January 1st, 2024, there's a chance you won't need to file a BOI report, but there is some nuance to that. So lot covered there. As you can see, it's a lot of details. Highly recommend digging in if you do think you are exempt, because once again, most businesses are likely not exempt. So we touched on, what is a reporting company? We touched on the exemptions. We touched on what's on the form. I think next it would be helpful to cover who is a beneficial owner. So beneficial owners, once again, there's 2 types. There's folks who exercise substantial control, which we'll dig into in a little bit more detail, but effectively C-suite executives, senior officers, directors, managers, etc., all beneficial owners, or keyword or those who directly or indirectly own 25% or more ownership interest in the business. So can be a quantitative ownership threshold to be considered a beneficial owner, or it could be a qualitative title or decision-making capability within the organization that can also be deemed a beneficial owner. So a few examples of that: perhaps a husband and wife own a business together. Perhaps it's 50-50. Perhaps one owns more than the other. Regardless, as long as they both have more than 25% ownership in the business, they would be deemed beneficial owners in the company. On the other end of the spectrum, say a COO who has zero ownership interest in the business, but is a COO, clearly has some decision-making power, runs a company, that would be ultimately a beneficial owner. And then lastly, a board chairman of a UK-based multinational corporation with US sales and operations unit, that individual would also be a beneficial owner due to substantial control. So those are the different types of beneficial owners. Here's more detail if you want to dig in. As you can see, senior officers, important decision makers, a couple catch-alls there. So do spend some time with this. You can reference this as well on our website, and these materials will be distributed afterwards. And then company applicant. Company applicant is disclosing all the same information as a beneficial owner, including that image of the ID. However, a company applicant is the individual or the services vendor that actually forms the original entity. And fortunately, you only have to report a company applicant for entities that were formed on or after January 1st, 2024. So fortunately, if you formed before January 1st, 2024, you do not have to go dig up in the archives who you used to form an entity 25 years ago. That fortunately isn't the case. You just have to report company and BO information, no company applicant information. But those new entities do. Those new entities do need to disclose their company applicants. So that's another distinction and detail that some folks get hung up on. But we've alluded to the deadlines. I thought it'd be helpful just to put a bow on it here. Reporting began on January 1st, 2024. So the clock's been ticking since the start of the year to file the BOI reports. Entities formed prior to January 1st, 2024 have 97 days from today to file, or need to file before January 1st, 2025. So not a lot of time there, especially when thinking about holidays. So really the time is now to get this out of the way, because you don't want it to be a year-end hassle if you realize your driver's license ends up expiring, or God forbid, you don't have an EIN, and who knows, maybe the FinCEN portal could even crash, for Christ's sake. We don't know. They've never filed this many reports before, but it's really important to kind of get out ahead of this stuff. And then entities formed on or after January 1st, 2024, they have to file a BOI report within 90 days of forming their entities. So a lot of folks who formed earlier in the year might already be past that 90-day mark. You certainly want to avoid the liability and get that information in. We talked about change of information. We talked a little bit about exemptions. Now, if you are exempt and you become non-exempt, say your revenue decreases, or you stop reporting with the SEC, or a company goes private or something like that, then you have to also let FinCEN know by filing a report. In those instances, we've covered a lot. We've covered a lot on reporting. There's a lot of boxes to check. There's significant penalties if you do not do this correctly. And FinCEN has not levied any fines so far, but these fines are substantial: $591 a day, up to $10,000, criminal penalties, imprisonment. This is scary stuff. This is not a joke. People are going to get blindsided by this. You likely will see a high profile case before you see a small business get fined. But I think, ultimately FinCEN is really looking to get this information so that they can, start policing the United States a little bit more diligently. And that's why these fines are so significant. And once again, this is per entity. So if you have 100 entities, see a lot of real estate groups or investment firms like that have several entities, this can be a very large liability, and one that can be easily avoided by working to get this stuff done up front. So, we've had the benefit of meeting with FinCEN throughout the course of the year. We attend a lot of events. We speak at a lot of events like this one, for example. But the recent FinCEN updates really have been kind of bi-weekly FAQs that are being released. And, if you don't file or if you don't follow FileForms on LinkedIn, we tend to post articles pretty consistently as those updates come out. So please do throw us a follow and stay up to speed on all the updates. But FinCEN's providing clarity so that more and more folks can have an understanding of what their filing requirements are. FinCEN's hosted a few live events. We've attended several of them to help spread awareness. I think generally they're a little overwhelmed with how much is still needed to kind of get the word out. It's pretty evident that they're doing the best they can, but once again, I've never done this before, so I think it's really important to kind of take that in. And I think New York SBDC has done a great job of that with events like this and some of the press we've put out with them, just helping to spread awareness. FinCEN's going to start more substantial marketing efforts. I believe they were supposed to start last week. So they're definitely starting to prioritize more and try to make this a little bit more prevalently known. But ultimately, you might be opting to your CPA or attorney to get kind of real guidance or potentially FileForms, because I think a lot of questions are going to come as folks get into the filing process. We can alleviate most of those questions, but just thought it's worth noting that this will become more popular as we get close to the deadline. And then ultimately, FinCEN's director at some of these live events has been every bit upfront about how encouraging they are of not to wait till the last minute. I think they have some hesitancy on their end, just once again already being a little overwhelmed to need as much runway as they can, and they don't want folks to wait till December 31st to file these forms, and potentially there's a mishap. So there's a lot of signals from the government that this isn't going anywhere and that folks need to get compliant. Some folks on the line might be keeping their eye on some of these court cases that have come about recently on the Corporate Transparency Act. However, most recently, an Oregon district court last week denied a preliminary injunction leading to the CTA likely to be considered constitutional. So earlier this year in the 11th Circuit of Alabama, or excuse me, at the district court level of Alabama, there was a case where a judge ruled that the CTA was unconstitutional, effectively an overstretch of government jurisdiction. However, that was quickly appealed by the Department of Justice. Now that appealed case is at the 11th Circuit Court, and those oral arguments will actually be heard tomorrow. But at the end of the day, after speaking to FinCEN directly, after speaking to a lot of attorneys in Washington, it's very evident that these court cases will not get wrapped up by the end of the year, and the deadline's not moving. So effectively, some of these plaintiff groups might get temporary relief, but the lion's share of the 30 to 40 million businesses will need to get compliant and maintain compliance. And there's other cases in kind of lower level courts throughout the country, but those are some of the highlights that we've been following closely. And once again, definitely follow our blog or look on LinkedIn if you need more frequent updates on the court cases. But once again, 4.6 million reports have been filed so far. Only about 12% or so of the total population of reporting companies have filed. So there's going to be quite a bit of filing, probably about 30 million reports filed, in the next 97 days. And, I think we're pretty realistic that not everyone's going to be able to get their report in on time. And there more than likely will be a safe harbor, if you will, Q1, Q2 next year. But certainly don't want to let things drag out too long, given how substantial the fines are. So, FinCEN has a solution that does help folks file for free. So, they do have effectively a static PDF experience that allows you to kind of teach yourself by reading 93 pages of government jargon whether or not you need to file. Perhaps this presentation has already kind of helped you along that path and maybe saved you some reading time. But between kind of reading, learning, aggregating the information on the company and the beneficial owners, FinCEN's expecting it to take 1 to 2 hours per report to get them complete. Some simple ownership structures will be able to breeze through it a little bit more quickly than that. But there are a few steps. Generally speaking, the experience on the FinCEN portal has been a little bit underwhelming. Folks kind of get confused and can kind of use some hand holding, but unfortunately they don't really have any real support in place because they're new to this, and they quite frankly are a little under resourced. So that's what you can expect from the free FinCEN experience. But we appreciate that business owners and other associations could use a little bit more support than what the government's able to provide. So America's SBDC New York has teamed up with FileForms to offer a preferred pricing experience, but then also a guided BOI experience using our technology with our team on standby to support throughout the filing process. So we work with many communities, organizations, small businesses directly with an easy to use system to really help make BOI filing take more like 10 minutes than several hours. Here's a few snapshots of our technology and ultimately the dashboard that we use to track multiple companies if you're looking to file for a bunch of different businesses or even just one company, and kind of what the company details and user interface looks like. So we have a lot of optimization and features built into this technology where you can push invites to people, securely aggregate their IDs, not be obligated to send them via text or email. Security is part of our brand. It's part of the trust we instill within our clients and those partners that we work with. And also efficiency. So being able to use information over many entities, being able to send notifications and reminders to folks, monitor the data, given the need to re-report within 30 days of changes. All of those pieces exist within our technology, which is going to really help make this experience very easy. And with that, I will pull up a QR code. Some folks might have some questions. Looks like we've teed up a few. Go ahead and scan this QR code so that you can reap the benefit of this discount. And ultimately, we will do some questions, and then we'll do a demo, and then we'll do a little bit more questions, and then we will call it a day and let you all get back to your Thursday.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And yes, let's do some questions. If someone in a company owns less than 25% of the company, do they need to be reported in BOI, or is that not required?
Well, if they own less than 25%, then they wouldn't have to report due to their ownership percentage, because recall, there's a 25% ownership threshold to be considered a beneficial owner per ownership of the business. So they wouldn't be a beneficial owner in that definition, but in the other definition of beneficial owner, which is do they exercise substantial control or key decision-making power, that would potentially be a determining factor of them being a BO or not. So you have to ask, if it's only 20%, now what's their role? Are they a CEO? Are they part of the board? Are they a senior officer of sorts? If they are, then they are a BO.
Thank you. That makes sense. And Ian, I appreciate you putting some commonly asked questions so we can make sure to hit these. So I know we have definitely had people ask, well, should I wait or should I go ahead and file? I know your answer will be to go ahead and get on the front end of this, not wait. But yeah, for any fence sitters, what are your thoughts, Frank?
I think just maybe put a calendar invite on your schedule or set a reminder on your phone just so that you don't forget it. This is something that's easily forgotten, and just given the $591 a day fines, I think it's just going to be really frustrating for folks if they forget and they get blindsided by a fine. So is there significant benefit to getting it done this week versus in 2 or 3 weeks? I'm a realistic person. It depends on your schedule. It depends whether you have time or what your schedule looks like. But we can Guarantee you can file with ease. It only takes a little bit amount of time, and then you never have to really think about this until there's a change of information, which our system will help you with. So it's very important to just know that this is on autopilot and easy street as soon as it's done, and you won't miss the deadline. So it's really up to you.
Thank you. And so to clarify one more time, because this is a common question as well, are nonprofits exempt?
Nonprofits are exempt from filing.
Excellent. And then let's go over entities that own another entity. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Exactly. So, many cases, entities own other entities. In the context of keeping this simple, let's talk about a parent entity and a child entity. And the parent owns the child. Now, who owns the parent? That's going to help determine who owns the child. So, if there's two beneficial owners that own the parent 50-50, then 50-50 ownership exists at the child level as well. So, it's kind of a look down, look up kind of scenario, but a beneficial owner is always an individual. So you have to determine who at the top owns all those at the bottom, and that's how it would work. And in more complex ownership structures, once again, our team's great on standby, ready to help. But generally speaking, I think rule of thumb, beneficial owner has to be an individual, and you have to trace the ownership up through the corporate structure and then look back down.
Okay. And we do have lots of business owners who have DBAs. How does that play into the filing process?
If you solely have a DBA and you don't have an LLC or any type of registration with another legal entity, then if you're strictly just doing business with the DBA, then you do not need to file a BOI report. However, if you do have an LLC and you do have a DBA for that LLC, then you more than likely will need to file because you do form a legal entity with the Secretary of State or formed a legal entity with the Secretary of State. So that will be the determining factor once again. So I think it's also to just highlight that if you are a unregistered, no formed LLC type sole proprietor, sole proprietors that are just operating on their own accord do not need to file a BOI report because they didn't go through that formation process at the Secretary of State level.
Thank you. And in your experience with helping lots of small businesses engage with this process, where are the pain points that you're seeing small businesses run into trouble?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, all the definitions can get a little overwhelming. Tracing all the information, getting not keying in the wrong address, not having the system short out, need to start over. Really just optimized user experience is going to help push you through this and get it done quicker. Within our platform, for example, every key term, defined term, beneficial owner definition, there's a tooltip and there's a team member on standby to answer that question. So there's kind of self-learning and then assisted learning at your fingertips every step of the way. And we didn't highlight this, but our platform is starting at $179, so $179 to save effectively hours of time. I think a lot of business owners would see the benefit in that, and then 20% off that gets you below $150. So I think a lot of business owners see that benefit as well. But I think just having support along the way, this is new, this is complicated. Folks don't really love doing this type of work, but we do. So we want to help make it easy.
All right. Well, let's move into, we'll have a demo here. So for anybody who wants to see behind the scenes, this is your opportunity to do that. If you have your questions answered and want to jet, we thank you for being with us today. And we will again send out a recording here and a link to these slides so that you have these materials as a reference ongoing and can come back and look at anything that you need to go over again. Okay, so I will turn the time over then to Ian to see behind the scenes at FileForms.
Thank you, Jenny. So as Frank just went through all of the information, what does it look like in action? I will say this looks, the material is the same as going on FinCEN as well, but here's the kind of dashboard that you will see on FileForms to get started. So you'll have your companies, your ownership if you're a beneficial owner, foreign accounts if you need an FBAR report. But you can see one company is unpaid. If you have multiple, you'll have this banner as well. So you can pay for all of your entities at once and move forward. So getting started, ultimately, you can come here, file a new BOI report, create a new form. You can download our template if you'd like, if you have multiple entities and would like to get that information in there. And then if you have multiple beneficial owners on an entity, you can just fill out your entity information and then add them in bulk to each entity that are required, again, saving you time. So if you'd like to edit the company, you can do that here. You can invite an admin. I won't get into that, but you can also delete your company here. But you can see my filing status. I haven't filed this entity, but I picked a subscription product. So I'll show you the details as we go through it. Up here, the toolbar, you can kind of click through each step. So you have your beneficial owners, your company applicants, given this is a new company formed in 2024. You'll then get access to the review and submit stage where you can download your FinCEN transcript post-filing. So we ask a few questions here. I did post the quiz in the chat there, but you can always take it as you go through the process as well. So you can see, ask a couple of questions. You can go through it. We look at the large operating company exemption and then the other exemptions here. Since I checked nothing, it says I'm required to file a BOI report. So all of the fields are determined that are mandatory by a red star. Again, Frank was touching on the tooltips, definitions here of what's needed. We have data validation to further mitigate any risk of mistyping anything. We're also connected to the Google API. So I'll put this in there. You can see my address just updated for the Brooklyn address there. So data formation required. You can move to the next step. So you're going through this. If you have any questions, you can always hit Chaser Eye on the other side. We'll answer these within hopefully a few minutes of your filing experience. So as you can see, I have 3 different beneficial owners here on my entity. You can do it. You can add them manually. You can add them from a previous report or add them by email. You have a definition here of beneficial ownership, but you can come over here, add manually, add by email. Those are the different steps. If you'd like to request information from a BO of yours and you would like them to add their info directly on here, you can do that as well. So what does that really look like? Let me just go through the process. Ultimately, if you have a FinCEN ID, which isn't required, you can upload that, bypass the rest of the steps. But you could start with an ID upload with our OCR scanning. It'll take a picture and scan all of the information off of the ID, populate the fields here, so you can move forward to the next step where you're entering in your license information. We'll track the expiration date to keep you reminded of any changes that might have occurred. So we can ask you to take a look at your BOI report to remain compliant with changes of information. As you're going through it, you can upload an image via text. So you can just basically do this on your phone, take a picture, or you could just upload the image directly as you get through it if you don't start with the scan. So you can just populate that image there. Save and submit, you're moving on to the next step, company applicants as well. So here, generally, if it's an attorney, or a CPA or a registered agent doing the formation or yourself and you have a FinCEN ID, you could just enter that in, move that, and then, ultimately you don't have to populate the rest of the information. However, if you don't have that info, you do need to fill it out. And again, you can upload the ID of the company applicant, but we'll move forward and just get through that step there. So definition, you can learn more about company applicants here. This will take you to the paywall where you can choose your product that best suits you. So you have our one-time filing fee. Ultimately, you get everything done, get a guided experience, and then, the unlimited filing subscription. If you believe there's going to be changes, you can always return to your form and make those updates at no extra cost. If you need a legal opinion, we can help you get in touch with one of our attorneys that will review that with you. you pick your product, go here, go to the paywall, and then ultimately you get to this step where you can review all the information before submitting, make sure everything's completed. You can download your filing analysis, which is a audit of everything that's in the entity itself before filing, but then you can ultimately submit directly to FinCEN. I can't because I have yet to pay, but this will be the full suite filing experience. As you can see, it took about 5 minutes to get through, given all of the steps we kind of try to help you guys get through without manually typing in all of this stuff and doing it over and over again.
All right. Thank you for that behind the scenes sneak peek of what you're doing. We appreciate that. And just to be clear, so you can sign up for a free account. Is that correct, Frank?
Yeah, that's completely correct.
Okay.
You can sign up, you can get your information in, you can take the quiz, determine if you need to file or not, get all the educational resources. And ultimately, when you're ready to push to FinCEN, that's where you can kind of get that promo code out, get 20% off, and get back to running your business. So upon submission, we'll provide a confirmation number and a FinCEN transcript, which are two deliverables to know that you've filed and it's completed. And then going forward, as changes pop up, you can go into your profile and make those changes and resubmit. And ultimately, if you're on a subscription, which was the $199 option, you'll get notifications, reminders, and be able to submit as many times as you need throughout the year. So that's kind of helpful context, hopefully, between the two options and kind of what to expect after the initial filing.
Okay. And just in case anyone is interested in that special offer that you have given for SBDC clients, do you mind showing that QR code one more time before
Yes,
we wrap up for today?
of course.
All right. So while Frank gets that on the screen, I do want to thank Frank and Ian for being with us today and for getting the word out about this very important update to small business ownership that a lot of people are still working on understanding. Oh, great. Frank put it in the chat. Perfect. So you can grab that code there if you are interested in that. And we do always love to hear from our attendees. So in a moment, I will shut down the webinar and you'll see a survey if you have a few minutes. We do appreciate your feedback. And with that, Frank, is there anything that you'd like to say as we wrap up today?
That's it. I hope everyone found this helpful, educational, and we'd love to work with you and any other folks in your network. So we're here to provide the answers to questions that people have. This is new. We appreciate it. We're business owners ourselves, so we want to make sure this can be super, super easy. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. My colleague Ian at fileforms.com can help handhold you through the process or answer any complicated questions that haven't been addressed on today's presentation. But hope everyone has a great week, and don't wait till the last minute. 97 days is going to fly by, and it's easier to get this done than to outrun it. Life's too short to be following court cases and things like that. Be easier just to spend 10 minutes getting this done, and it's for good cause. I mean, terrorism is something that's really unfortunate, and hopefully this helps prevent a lot of those issues. So great speaking with you all, and thank you again.
Absolutely. All right. Have a lovely rest of your day, everyone. Thank you again. Bye-bye.